The Selfish Delusion, by Nameless Saint. Introduction. The origin of self-serving behaviors and whether humans are inherently selfish has been a topic of debate. While some argue that scientific evidence supports the notion that humans are naturally selfish or self-interested, it does not necessarily dictate that we must solely prioritize our own needs and desires. Human beings are complex creatures with a wide range of emotions, thoughts, and beliefs. One of the most significant aspects of human nature is our self-interest, which is the driving force behind most of our actions. However, many of us believe that we are not selfish and that we act out of kindness, generosity, or altruism. This delusion is a prevalent phenomenon that has been studied by philosophers, psychologists, and sociologists. The human nature of selfishness. Selfishness is a fundamental aspect of human nature. We are biologically wired to prioritize our own needs and desires over those of others. This instinctual behavior is rooted in our evolutionary history, where survival of the fittest was the rule. In this context, selfishness was a necessary trait to ensure the survival of the individual and the species. The desire for food, shelter, and reproduction was the driving force behind all behavior. However, as human society evolved, the notion of selfishness became more complex. People began to live in groups, and cooperation became essential for survival. In this context, selfishness could be harmful to the group and the individual. Therefore, society developed rules, norms, and values to regulate behavior and ensure the well-being of all members. These rules included concepts such as fairness, justice, and morality. Despite the development of social norms, selfishness remains a powerful force in human behavior. We are still driven by the desire for personal gain, status, and recognition. This drive for self-interest can manifest in different ways, such as greed, envy, and competition. Even acts of kindness and generosity can be motivated by a desire for personal benefit, such as social approval or a sense of moral superiority. The delusion of altruism. Despite the pervasive nature of selfishness, many people believe that they are not selfish. They believe that they act out of kindness, generosity, or altruism. This belief is a delusion because it ignores the underlying motives behind their behavior. People often engage in altruistic acts because it makes them feel good, earns them social approval, or aligns with their moral values. These motives are not inherently selfish, but they are still rooted in personal gain. One explanation for this delusion is the cognitive dissonance theory. According to this theory, people have a need for consistency between their beliefs and actions. When people engage in behavior that contradicts their beliefs, they experience psychological discomfort. To resolve this discomfort, they may rationalize their behavior or change their beliefs. In the case of altruistic behavior, people may believe that they are acting out of kindness rather than self-interest to maintain consistency between their behavior and beliefs. Another explanation is the social desirability bias. This bias refers to the tendency for people to present themselves in a socially desirable way. People may feel pressure to appear kind and generous to others to gain social approval or avoid social disapproval. Therefore, they may engage in altruistic behavior to present themselves in a positive light, even if their motives are not entirely selfless. Famous philosophers' views on selfishness and altruism. Many famous philosophers have explored the nature of human selfishness and the delusion of altruism. Let us examine some of their perspectives. Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes, an English philosopher of the 17th century, believed that human beings were naturally selfish and violent. According to Hobbes, humans were in a constant state of war with each other, and life was nasty, brutish, and short, without the presence of a strong government to regulate behavior. Hobbes believed that people were driven by their desire for power and self-preservation, and that this self-interest was the root of all human behavior. Hobbes' view of human nature was pessimistic. and he believed that society needed a strong government to control people's self-interest and prevent chaos. In his book, Leviathan, Hobbes argued that people should give up their individual rights to a sovereign ruler, who would have absolute power to enforce order and protect the common good. Without this social contract, Hobbes believed that life would be a constant struggle for power, and people would be unable to cooperate for the greater good. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. In contrast to Hobbes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, an 18th-century French philosopher, believed that humans were naturally good and cooperative. According to Rousseau, people were born free and equal, but society corrupted them with its artificial institutions and values. Rousseau believed that social inequality and competition were the sources of human selfishness, and that people could only be truly happy and virtuous in a state of nature, free from the constraints of society. Rousseau believed that people had a natural tendency towards compassion and empathy, and that this was the basis of morality. He argued that people should strive for a society based on the general will, or the common good, rather than individual interests. In his book, The Social Contract, Rousseau proposed a system of direct democracy, where people would participate in government and make decisions collectively for the benefit of all. Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant, an 18th-century German philosopher, believed that humans were rational beings who could act out of duty and morality, rather than self-interest. According to Kant, people had a moral duty to respect the inherent dignity and autonomy of other people, and to act in accordance with the universal moral law. Kant believed that people should act out of a sense of duty, rather than personal gain, and that this was the basis of true morality. Kant argued that morality was not based on consequences or personal desires, but on the inherent value of human beings. He believed that people had a moral obligation to act in a way that respected the dignity and autonomy of others, and that this was the foundation of a just society. Kant's ethical theory, known as deontology, emphasized the importance of moral duty and universal principles, rather than subjective personal preferences. Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche, a 19th-century German philosopher, rejected the idea of universal morality and believed that human behavior was driven by the will to power. Nietzsche believed that people were naturally selfish and competitive, and that morality was a tool used by the weak to control the strong. According to Nietzsche, people should embrace their individual will to power and reject the constraints of society and morality. Nietzsche believed that morality was a form of self-deception, and that people should reject the idea of guilt and embrace their desires and instincts. He believed that people should strive for personal excellence and self-fulfillment, rather than conforming to the expectations of others. Nietzsche's philosophy emphasized the importance of individualism and self-expression, and rejected the idea of universal moral values. Implications for ethics and morality. The idea that all people are selfish, but have a delusion we are not, has significant implications for ethics and morality. If we accept this premise, then it becomes challenging to justify ethical principles that are based on the assumption of human altruism or benevolence. Instead, ethical theories must acknowledge the reality of self-interest and develop ways to regulate behavior that take this into account. One approach to ethics that acknowledges the reality of self-interest is consequentialism, which evaluates actions based on their outcomes rather than their motives. According to consequentialism, an action is morally right if it produces the greatest net benefit for the greatest number of people. This approach does not rely on the assumption of human altruism, but instead focuses on the practical consequences of actions. However, consequentialism has been criticized for its potential to justify harmful actions if they produce a net benefit, and for its inability to account for individual rights and justice. Another approach to ethics that acknowledges the reality of self-interest is ethical egoism, which argues that people should act in their own self-interest, but within a framework of moral rules and principles. Ethical egoism recognizes that people are naturally motivated by self-interest, but also emphasizes the importance of moral principles and the well-being of others. However, ethical egoism has been criticized for its potential to justify harmful actions if they are in an individual's self-interest, and for its inability to account for the needs of others. A third approach to ethics that acknowledges the reality of self-interest is virtue ethics, which emphasizes the importance of personal character and values in ethical decision-making. Virtue ethics recognizes that people are motivated by self-interest, but also emphasizes the importance of developing virtuous character traits such as compassion, empathy, and justice. According to virtue ethics, people should strive to become virtuous individuals who act in accordance with their values and the common good. However, virtue ethics has been criticized for its potential to be subjective and culturally biased, and for its lack of concrete guidance in ethical decision-making. In conclusion, the idea that all people are selfish but have a delusion we are not, is a complex and controversial topic. While it is clear that self-interest is a fundamental aspect of human nature, the extent to which it motivates behavior and the implications for ethics and morality are open to debate. The perspectives of famous philosophers such as Hobbes, Rousseau, Kant, and Nietzsche offer different insights into the nature of selfishness and the delusion of altruism. Ultimately, the challenge for ethical theorists is to develop frameworks that acknowledge the reality of self-interest, while also promoting the well-being of individuals and society as a whole. Only God can change us. If you enjoy watching this video, kindly consider subscribing to my channel. New content is posted daily. Thank you, and may God bless you.